Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. For Tom, our third Michigan Monday podcast, but the first after an actual game. So I guess I'll just ask, how's it going?
It's going well, and I was impressed. I mean, this is just week one, and as we said a million times on our week one recap show, you don't want to overreact to week one, but that was a good, solid performance from Michigan, and played a pretty decent Western Michigan team and beat it pretty thoroughly. So, there are certainly some concerns, but that was about as well as that game could have reasonably gone for Michigan, I think.
Yeah, I think fans have to be happy. I think Ohio State fans need to take notice and don't just typical Michigan. This was a good performance offensively and defense against a good MAC opponent. And this was what a top 15, 20 teams should do against a MAC opponent. And I'm not saying Michigan is there yet, but that's what they did. And they look good doing it, looked good in many different areas doing it. First off, we can start off with Ronnie Bell, the star receiver, who was having a great game and then injured his knee and had to be helped off. And I haven't heard anything. It doesn't look good. It certainly didn't look good. But when he had a one-handed catch that didn't count because he pushed off. He had a nice punt return. He had another long catch, and just hoping everything turns out well. Maybe he can return later in the season. But for an offense that was moving well and looking good, to lose a playmaker like that is devastating. So you hope he's doing well, but Tom, that one hurts.
That one hurts, and it was just a bummer to see it. I mean, when you have a guy who's been around for a while, and it's like, oh, this is maybe going to be his breakout year, and then to see him leave. And you're right. I mean, we haven't heard an official diagnosis yet, but anytime you're riding off in the cart and have a towel over your head, like that's not a great sign. I can read the body language there, and it's not fantastic. So that was a real bummer to see, because he was having a pretty good game, and Michigan's not like loaded with skill talent on the outside like that. There's not that much big playability on this offense, especially at the receiver spots. And it was like, maybe he was going to be that guy for them this year. And now maybe he's not, which that's a big loss if he really is done for the year.
So Michigan rushes for 335 yards in the game, averaging 7.8 yards per carry. Cade McNamara starts at quarterback, goes 9 for 11 for 136 yards, 2 touchdowns, a long of 76 yards, that long going to the aforementioned Ronnie Bell. JJ McCarthy, the freshman quarterback, comes in late, goes 4 for 6 for 80 yards, including a 69-yard touchdown to Dalen Baldwin, which, let's talk about this real quick, Tom. McCarthy escapes pressure, kind of breaks out of a sack, rolls right, stops and throws all the way back left across the field left. Dalen Baldwin catches it and races into the end zone. Let's just acknowledge, don't ever throw this pass. Don't ever do this unless you're willing to be punished for it. But what I liked about it is, if you see the replay, like as soon as McCarthy is starting to set up, like Baldwin and his receiver and Baldwin and his defender are pretty much even. And there's just this connection where he knows Baldwin is going to break free, and he does. And it was just a really nice throw, nice communication between the two, and McCarthy threw him open. And I don't want to say there's a full-on quarterback controversy, because there isn't, but it was an interesting play from those two.
McCarthy had a couple times that I went like, oh yeah, that's a freshman trying to do too much. And there was that play where, like, I mean, that was great. It was a very exciting play. Like the first time you try and do that against Penn State or Ohio State or Wisconsin, like that's getting picked off and it's getting run back for a touchdown, and everyone's going, why did you throw that? What were you possibly thinking? And it's like, well, that just had the look of guy who was so much better than everyone else at high school. He could just do crap you shouldn't do and get away with it because it was so much more talented. Like, and that's true to an extent against like Western Michigan. Like that's not going to be true all year. So the first time you try and do that against a better defense, like that's not going to go quite as well as it did on Saturday. And he had another one where he had a guy in his face and he was trying to do too much and he fumbled. It's a guy who's just has gotten away with stuff for a long time, who has to kind of, now you have to learn, like, you can't just do everything. I mean, you go back to like Terrell Pryor's freshman year. It was the same thing with him. It was like, he's always been the fastest player on the field by the widest of margins. So, you kind of have to have that learning curve where it's like, oh, okay, now there are people who are as athletic as me or close to as athletic as me. So I can't get away with quite, I can't beat some of the angles I used to beat. I can't make some of the throws I used to make. So that's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for him. But yeah, I mean, it was impressive. They kept things by and large. They kept things relatively simple for him, out of the gate, which is smart. That's what you'd want to do. But yeah, he was impressive. But yeah, he's gonna, he's either gonna learn or he's gonna make some really, really costly mistakes at some point relatively soon.
Watching the replay, I could hear Pep Hamilton in my mind yelling at John O'Corn, "John, no! Oh no, John, no!" And you do that too many times, and there's going to be some center fielders there waiting for it, or some help there as well to intercept that pass, or take it back six the other way. But all in all, fair performance. Cade McNamara, I wanted to talk about his debut, basically not really his debut, but his season opening debut as a starter. 9 for 11, 136 yards, 2 touchdowns, passer rating of 245.68, which is the best season openers of the Jim Harbaugh era. You go back to Joe Milton last year, 15 of 25 for 225 and a touchdown. Shea Patterson is in 2019. He was 17 of 29 for 203 yards with 3 touchdowns. 2018, he was 20 of 30 for 227 yards with no touchdowns and an interception. Wilton Speight was about similar to McNamara in terms of number of throws. It's just we hear the quarterbacks, they have like a good start and then it all goes to heck after that. I don't know that we'll see that from McNamara. Maybe we will, but he was 9 of 11, very calm, very under control, made the throws that were there to make. And really, I just look completely comfortable. And this being the Michigan quarterback week 1, and the huge caveat of, hey, don't generalize or make too much of the first game, because that has come back to haunt everybody when it comes to the Michigan quarterbacks under Jim Harbaugh. Funnily enough, Jake Rudock, who maybe was the best quarterback under Jim Harbaugh, his debut, and I'd completely forgotten about this, 27 of 43 for 279 yards, pretty good, 2 touchdowns, but 3 interceptions in that 24-17 loss at Utah. And that came flooding back, where just don't make so many mistakes and you'll win. And that's where Cade McNamara is right now. And, just losing Ronnie Bell is going to hurt him, but we'll see how they use those other pieces.
Yeah. And the offense was efficient enough. I mean, it wasn't like dominant, but it was efficient enough against a pretty good defense. And, if you can take care of the ball and you're able to move the ball on the ground, and they were, then you can make a couple big plays. Like, that's going to get it done against a decent number of teams on the schedule. I mean, suddenly the Washington game next week doesn't look nearly as daunting as it did at the start of the season. And it doesn't look like you're necessarily going to have to score 40 points to beat Washington, because they just scored 7 against Montana. So that might not be quite as steep a challenge as we thought it might be looking at it over the summer. But, if McNamara can keep not making mistakes and just sort of being efficient, that might be enough to keep him in the starting job for the whole season. I mean, that as soon as you start having losses, like you could already see, like you could tell JJ McCarthy is going to get a chance at some point this year. If they've got a couple losses, you're going to make that Todd Beckman and Terrell Pryor kind of changeover. But yeah, if McNamara plays like he did on Saturday, then yeah, I mean, he can keep that job probably as long as he wants to.
Dan Villari also got in the game, was running the ball some, so that was good to see. I was really impressed with Blake Corum, and was not at all like the player he was last year. He showed glimpses of this last year, but just glimpses. This year, in this game, he was consistently making plays in the passing game, the running game. He looked like somebody that the Big Ten is going to have to take notice of. We'll see how well he does in terms of breaking tackles. I think he broke a tackle or 2 in this one, but we'll see what happens if he's running between the tackles in the Big Ten. Him and Hassan Haskins were a great 1-2 punch. I know there's going to be some thunder, lightning, all of the typical cliches there. But with these two guys, it's like Hassan Haskins just pounds and pounds and pounds. And then he eventually breaks through. He had a touchdown run after the Ronnie Bell injury, 22 yards, like running like Roger Craig. I don't know if people listening now know who Roger Craig is, but go watch some highlights. And there's some similarity just running through and just keeping the legs moving. And so those two together, and then you add in, we'll just throw some end arounds in there. AJ Henning had a 74-yarder. Roman Wilson had a 43-yarder, where just different ways of getting the receivers involved, because those inside guys don't know how much they're going to get the ball in terms of throwing it. But if you can, like any way you can get them the ball, that's good. They're going to have to be more involved now, though. But yeah, Blake Corum looked really, really good to me. 7.9 yards per carry, 14 carries, 111 yards. Tom, I think the key in this, no yards lost. Like him or Haskins, neither of them were tackled in the backfield.
That's good for them. I mean, that's good for their offensive line. I mean, that's all good news on that front. I mean, if you run for 335 yards, you average 7.8 yards per carry. And it wasn't like, I mean, they had some big runs. And I mean, Hennig had that 74-yarder on the end around. You mentioned Wilson had 43, but Hassan Haskins averaged 5.4 and didn't have one longer than 22. Mm-hmm. Corum averaged 7.9, didn't have one longer than 30. Corum was the one that, at the beginning of the game, I looked at my notes. I've got Corum might be more of like a Chris Evans role, like out of the backfield in a passing situation. And, they ran him up the middle on 3rd and 5 at one point. I said, that's not his role. And then later it was like, well, maybe it's his role. That seemed, the broadcasters at one point talked about Josh Gaddis saying they had to be a downhill physical running team. And it's like that was kind of hard to square in my mind with Blake Corum, but maybe that's Hassan Haskins. And then Corum has his role as well. They had at one sequence where they couldn't cram it in at the goal line. And then they kicked a field goal from the 2 at the end of the half. It was just, Harbaugh went for it on 4th and 1 at the 22 early in the game and got it. And it was like, all right, well, that's good. Like, that's what you should be doing there. That's showing confidence in your players. And then they kick a field goal from the 2 at the end of the half when, you're the team that's supposed to be, tough and physical and a downhill running team. And then you can't punch it in against Western Michigan. So, this is not a finished product by any means, but for week 1, like that was a very good performance.
Yeah. I liked a little bit. I saw from Eric All, the tight end. We mentioned that, in the past, he's had some hands issues. He was 3 for 4 on targets. I didn't see any issues with him. Looked good. We'll see more from all of these receivers down the road. They just didn't need to. In this game, they rushed for 335 yards. So, what happens when they need to be involved, when they need Cornelius Johnson to pick up first downs and move the chains and catch 6 or 7 balls. We'll see more of Cade McNamara, and can he make those tough throws, tight windows. Offensive line for Michigan, I thought, you're opening up holes like that. You're protecting Cade McNamara. He had all kinds of time. I think they did well. Let's move to, Tom, maybe the defense of Michigan, where new defensive coordinator Mike McDonald doing some interesting things. There were times where, they did all kinds of different things. They were they're running a 3-4 where they had 3 linemen and then the 2 outside linebackers, and then they just had 1 linebacker in the middle. They played a nickel most of the time with Daxton Hill as that nickel guy, and they had R.J. Moten and Brad Hawkins as the safety. Sometimes it would be 2 high, sometimes it would be 1 high. Sometimes they'd have 2 linebackers and 4 linemen, and they just did all kinds of different stuff. But seeing some of the stuff that they did do, like the time they had just the 1 linebacker in the middle, and I'm thinking you can have 5 down linemen if counting the outside linebackers who are standing up, and just the 1 linebacker behind them against a spread offense like Ohio State. And Ohio State's just going to run for 1,000 yards on you. So you're going to have to change some things up on that one. Yeah,
and I think this is a little bit of the conversations we've had about Ohio State and playing against Minnesota can kind of carry over to this, because I don't know if what you saw out of Michigan on Saturday is going to be what you see from Michigan the rest of the season out on defense. I mean, you're playing some varied different types of offenses, and they're probably still trying to figure stuff out. And this is not going to be the finished product, and this is not going to be the final form of this Michigan defense, in the same way that, what you saw from Ohio State and the personnel you saw from Ohio State in game 1 is not necessarily going to be what you see game 2, because now you're playing a different team and a different style of offense. So things are going to change a little bit, but they didn't get as much push up front as I thought they might. Aiden Hutchinson had a heck of a game. I have a note. Aiden Hutchinson would have 30 sacks playing in the MAC. Like he would, I mean, he is just, he got some pressure a bunch of times, but there was not, the quarterback wasn't getting the line pushed back in his lap the way you might have expected against a MAC team. So that's, that's not a concern yet, but it's not exactly what you would be looking for in game one against a team you should beat by a couple touchdowns. So the defensive line started taking over more in the second half. They blocked a field goal at the end, at one point too, but you sort of started to see that talent take over in the second half. So, is that a depth thing? Is that but Western Michigan had some great ideas in the first half and then ran out of great ideas. And now, and now they're in trouble. We'll see on that, but it was encouraging, but not overwhelming to me on the defensive line. And for, maybe as often as that defensive line has been an issue in the past, maybe that counts as good news.
Definitely. I thought Caleb Ellaby, the Western Michigan quarterback, he's pretty good. He did some good things, and he's an experienced guy, and he provides a test because he can run, he can escape pressure, and he keeps his eyes downfield, made some nice throws after escaping a sack. Just overall Michigan's defense, the line, we'll see how that goes. I was a little disappointed that they only had 3 tackles for loss as a team against Western Michigan, but I'm sure they're going to get more aggressive against different opponents. This is one of those where we should just be able to do base stuff and win. And maybe that's what we saw. I do wonder how much of this is base. I think they will continue to be multiple. We knew coming into the season, are they 3-4? Are they 4-3? Are they this? Are they that? And the answer is yes. And it's like, well, that doesn't tell us anything. But what it tells us, I guess, is that they'll do all sorts of different things, but eventually they're going to have to find out what they're good at. And that what they're good at is going to have to mesh with, we'll have to combat what Ohio State's good at. And their good is going to have to be better than Ohio State's good. And it hasn't been for a very long time, but the more multiple you can be, I guess it's good, but you don't want to become a jack of all trades, a master of none. And there's some, you've got to, as Ryan Day says in offense, you got to find what you can hang your hat on. I think we don't even know where we are with Michigan in that. And I don't think they know either. It was similar to Ohio State throwing a bunch of stuff out on defense. And I think Michigan was doing the same thing, and we'll see what they continue to do. We talked before the season, maybe Daxton Hill needs to be a corner, and listening to rewatching the game where they were talking about how McDonald said Daxton Hill is going to be a corner at the next level. And I patted myself on the back a little bit for that one. But to see him in that role, in that nickel, that slot corner, we know firsthand how important that position can be if you're going to use it like that. We saw it with Sean Wade in 2019 when Ohio State's defense was awesome. And we saw it in 2020 when they didn't have that guy and it wasn't. So I think that's an interesting position for him, especially if Moten and Hawkins can stay consistent doing what they're doing. But you also have to be able to stop the run through all of this if you're going to play a true nickel.
Yeah, and that's the question. It's like, if you're going to play a nickel, but you're also going to have 5 guys down, basically a 5-man line, like I think there's a reason you don't typically see like a 5-1-5 defense like that. It seems like there's going to be some vulnerabilities there. So I'm going to be fascinated to watch this defense kind of develop throughout the course of the year, because I'm with you. I don't think they necessarily know what they are yet. They're sort of figuring out the personnel, figuring out the scheme. And, I don't know that we're necessarily going to get the data point that we expected next week with, this is a great Washington team, and this is going to be a real challenge, and we'll see how they fare against a good team like that. That was a little disappointing to me, because I thought that was going to be like, okay, this is the week we're going to know whether Michigan's 10-2 Michigan or 7-5 Michigan. And now I don't know if I think that anymore, but this is a really interesting defense to me, because you've got the outside pieces, or you've got the slot corner piece taken care of with Dax Hill now, but the outside corners are still like, they were okay, but you had a couple big plays hit against them, and Western Michigan's skill talent is not at the level of the skill talent you're going to see throughout the course of the year. So let's see how the outside corners hold up against some of the better receivers they're going to face this year. And all of a sudden, let's see what the Michigan State game looks like. Let's see what that what did Grant have? 240 something yards. I mean, that let's see what the Michigan defense looks like against him and that Michigan State offense. Cause all of a sudden, you might be feeling better about the Washington game, but now the Michigan State game might be a little more of like we'll see how that one goes.
Let's see what they do against Maryland's passing game with Vincent Gray and Jamon Green, who both gave up plays. Vincent Gray got away with a drop, like when a receiver got past him and dropped it. And so, you're not always going to be that fortunate. So, and I don't know if it's like a confirmation bias where we know these guys have given up plays. So let's just watch them to see if they give up plays. Aha, they do. So they're still not good. We'll see how good they get, but there's still concerns in that secondary corner specifically. They weren't really attacked too much down the middle, so we'll see where the safeties come in. Outside linebacker, getting back to the line a little bit, I liked David Ojabo, who was getting close to getting to the quarterback at his outside linebacker position. So him and Aiden Hutchinson could potentially become pretty good there. I would like to see more penetration from the interior of the defensive line, because they're almost like Chris Hinton, Donovan Jeter,
Mozzie Smith.
Yeah, you really didn't hear much from them. I understand they're supposed to occupy and let everybody else make plays, but it's okay for them to make plays as well. Linebackers, Josh Ross had a nice hit on Ellaby, I believe, put him in the ground cleanly, which was good to see. I would like to see some more playmaking from anybody, but again, I don't know if this was just a very, very conservative, like vanilla, no reason to show Washington anything, no reason to show anybody anything. Let's see how good we are with our skill. Let's get maybe a baseline of things and go from there. I think the baseline was just fine because Western Michigan rushes for 3.7 yards per carry, which is, I guess that's good enough for Michigan. We've seen that number way down in the past where they would just completely shut running games down, but then by the end of the season, they're getting torched by whatever else. So I guess, maybe that's pretty meaningless. 20 for 37 passing for Caleb Ellaby, 191 yards, long of 29, which is great. Long of 22 in the ground, which is great. So, overall Michigan defense really, like the offense, this was the game that you would have, Harbaugh would have signed up for this. Michigan fans would have signed up for this. Like, yeah, I'll take that right now. That sounds like a heck of a deal. Let me put my name on it. And then you're just happy that things look good and you can walk into the Washington game feeling good. We just, you won 47-14. You got to stick your chest out, put your nose in the air and appreciate it and let people know that Michigan's coming. And, everything they did worked and they were confident when they did it. There's no confusion. There's no bickering on the sidelines. Everything just seemed to be well oiled, and it wasn't a bunch of coaches coaching together for the first time. So I think overall, just things went as well as they could. Things looked good. They didn't look like a lost program. They looked like this was planned, and it wasn't just, now what do we do? They weren't putting out fires. It looked like everything, Tom, was under control from the get-go. So I think for me, that's a huge positive. Yeah,
it is a huge positive. It looked like a coherent football program. I don't know that they've solved all of their issues yet. I still, I'm with you. I kind of want to see, the two big questions we had going into the year, interior defensive line and cornerback on defense. Like, I don't know that I'm confident that they have either of those issues solved yet, but I'm also not sure that it's absolutely a tire fire in either of those spots either. It's like, I think you kind of grade them incomplete. Like that was okay. Now let's see what next week looks like before you start making some, more firm judgments. But, this doesn't look like a complete tire fire is an improvement. That is an improvement over what it has been at times in the past. It's an improvement over maybe what some expectations were for this season. This is a game we had penciled in as a win for Michigan before the season. Even in, if you went through the most pessimistic reading of the schedule, this was a win on even on that one. But it was a thorough win. That was a win that was not like, oh boy, it's a 10-point game with 5 minutes left and there's a way. It was like, no, that was over. That was over quickly. And, the way they did it, they did answer, I feel like, better about the running back situation, I think. I would have felt better about the wide receiver situation without the Ronnie Bell injury, but now I think that now is a little bit of a concern. And, yes, AJ Henning made a long touchdown on the end around, but you still haven't really seen him do it in the air. Now, especially without Bell, he may be called on to do more through the air. Cornelius Johnson did not have a big game in the air. Can he be someone who solves some downfield problems for them? There's just a lot of, there's still some questions. And I have a quote in here, and I believe this was Andre Ware who said this: "You're not built schematically or talent wise to do that." And they were talking about converting a 3rd and 15 against Western Michigan. Like, you as a team should be built to do whatever the heck you want to against Michigan or Western Michigan schematically and talent wise. So it's a little concerning. That quote was just like that's an interesting thing for an announcer to say about a team that should be and is winning by a whole bunch of points. So, this is not a Big Ten championship team, but this also didn't look like a team that's about to go 5-7 either. So, for week one, that's not so bad.
I would like to see them stretch the field more. And I know they had the long pass to Ronnie Bell. The Dalen Baldwin probably doesn't count in all of this because of how it happened. But, Eric All, his long was 11 yards. Cornelius Johnson, his long was 10 yards. AJ Henning, his long was 11 yards. And those slot guys, the smaller guys, they use them more in the run, and they have forever. And they never really get introduced into the passing game, especially not down the field. They're behind the line of scrimmage type stuff. And if Ronnie Bell is out, they're going to need, is it just going to be Baldwin and Johnson? Are those your two outside guys? And, you've got Roman Wilson, who was in the slot last year at times, really, really fast. Probably have to get more of him involved. But they need AJ Henning to step up as the receiver. And if you want to give him a couple of carries a game, I'm all for that as well. But that's, you need some downfield stuff to open up that running game, because eventually things are going to just continue to creep towards the line of scrimmage, and Blake Corum's explosion is going to get stifled because there's going to be an extra linebacker there, or an extra defender, or extra safety down there who is can match his quickness a little bit. And then Hassan Haskins, who is a powerful, punishing runner. When he's running, there's extra defenders there. If there's one guy taken out of the box for either of those guys, sometimes that's all you need, and you got to keep these chains moving. But you're going to have to do it through the air, because Michigan hasn't under Jim Harbaugh really just been able to establish the run and run and dictate the game. They've struggled at times, and sometimes they need the throw to open up the run. And now it's going to be difficult for them where the passing game is concerned, losing Ronnie Bell. And you just wonder how consistent, how balanced they can be, because I do really like Blake Corum and Hassan Haskins, but I think they're going to need some downfield stuff to keep those guys from just getting worn down to, no longer being 7 yards and 5 yards. Now they'll be, 4.5 yards per carry, and that's not good enough.
And the X factor there is Donovan Edwards, who I was expecting to see, sort of the way we saw Travion Henderson in Ohio State's game, where he's in the first quarter and getting some carries. He didn't come in until McCarthy came in, when it was 33-7. So, and then I think he ended up with 5-6 carries, something like that. And, didn't do a whole heck of a lot, but it was, that's not a ton of touches for a guy who came in as a 5-star guy. And, this is, is this the next, the next answer for Michigan at running back, and the guy who to break the Michigan running back curse, and not guys not getting drafted and all that kind of stuff. And I was a little surprised at that. So maybe he's not quite as far along as we thought he might be, but, can he develop throughout the course of the year? Because if you can get that, you get that third running back, that then helps you spread those carries a little bit more, keep those guys from wearing down as much as they might have otherwise. So, and he's kind of like he's a little bit in the middle of Corum and Haskins, where he's kind of like the happy medium between the two, where he's not quite as shifty probably as Corum, but he's not quite as big and strong as Haskins, but you need that guy too. That's okay to have that guy as well. And if they can get him ready to play, and I'm guessing that's a pass blocking and that kind of stuff, getting up to speed with that type of thing to get on the field more. If they can do that, that potentially presents a solution there that they didn't have on Saturday.
And finishing up with special teams, Jake Moody, place kicker, made both of his field goals, a 37-yarder and a 20-yarder that you mentioned earlier, where kind of odd how Michigan approached that last minute, running the ball down inside the red zone and running the clock out and calling timeouts, and just, Jim Harbaugh being very conservative there. But of course, they were by like 3 touchdowns at that point. So Blake Corum again, 79-yard kickoff return, finished with 212 all-purpose yards. Ronnie Bell had a 31-yard punt return. Of course, they're going to have to figure something out there, but overall special teams were good as well. Brad Robbins, 87 yards on 2 punts, long of 47, one inside the 20. So and they blocked a field goal as well. So all things look good on the special teams. And again, I guess any touch for Blake Corum at this point is a good one. So maybe start kicking it out of the end zone, even though one of those, he was like 2 yards deep and still returned it.
Yeah. I mean, he's someone who there's not a lot of explosiveness on this team, just in terms of skill talent. You may have that with AJ Henning. You got it with Blake Corum. You may we'll see if they have it with Donovan Edwards. I kind of grade that one incomplete right now, but those are guys. If you don't have a ton of those guys, you got to get find ways to get them the ball. They credit to Michigan. They did that. They found ways to get them the ball. The wide receiver took it on a handoff. The running back also got a chance to return kicks. Like, that's what you have to do. You've got to, if you don't have just a loaded depth chart with big explosive playmakers everywhere, you got to take the guys you have and find ways to do the most with them that you can.
Tom, I've written down my score prediction for next week with Washington at Michigan. Would you like to take a stab at what the score is going to be, and then I'll see how close I am to yours.
Well, thank you for not telling me we were going to do this. So I've given this zero thought whatsoever.
You're welcome.
I think I will go with Michigan 23, Washington 14.
Wow. You're going close. Me, I am fully buying into the hype. I'm going 34-7 Michigan over Washington. And there's probably going to be a turnover in there and a defensive score, perhaps more Blake Corum. So I'm buying all of the non-hype of Washington based on their loss to Montana, and all of the yes hype for Michigan based on their win over Western Michigan. A very good MAC team, Tom. I see you shaking your head.
I think we just made it through the entire show with Michigan fans going, "Oh, these guys are nice. They seem to know what they're talking about. They're not being negative towards Michigan." And you just undid all of that goodwill. By now, everyone's going, "You jerk! You're jinxing us." So good job.
Well, that's what I'm here for. So that will do. You got anything else before we get out of here?
Nope. Just super interested to see next week's game, because I do think it's going to be relatively close, and I don't know if we're going to know quite as much as we thought we might before the season, but we're going to know a lot more next week. And depending on how that game goes, I think you're either moving the window of possible outcomes for their season up a little bit more, or it gets real broad again. Because I think the floor raised a little bit for me after Saturday. But if they come out and lose to Washington, it's like, nope, everything's back in play again.
Well, if there's one thing we know about Michigan football, it's that season opener will tell you a lot. That will give you a good idea of how things are going to go. So you really, really want to put a lot of weight and stock into that one, which I have done because I know a lot about Michigan football. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching. As always, check out BuckeyeScoop.com. We will have I'll have Michigan Monday written here on Monday for you guys. Check it out with all kinds of interesting. I shouldn't brag and say stuff is going to be interesting that I write, but all kinds of things in there about what I saw from the Wolverines. And then also check us out on youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop for all kinds of videos, all of our podcasts, all of our interviews, all of those types of things. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you tomorrow.